All right, so next up we have a great presenter from one of our customers. How many of you have heard of SAP? So we're speaking today, or we're going to hear today, from a specific part of SAP called SAP NS2. Now, you may be wondering, what does the NS2 stand for? What does SAP NS2 do? I have a video that we can show you.
So in the threat bin for me, at the top of the list remains terrorism.
Not only do we live in a dangerous world, it's gotten more dangerous since we were together last year. We must learn to be able to deal with these various levels of threat around the world.
Because the public still does not fully understand the nature of the threat. And it feels like writing about Al-Qaeda before 9/11.
We put a man on the moon. We brought the Berlin Wall down. The U.S. has been a leader for so long.
America does have a special place, a special position, and set of responsibilities on this planet.
When we think of infrastructure for national security purposes, it's no longer the case that it is the government that has to worry about the capabilities of state actors and the private sector that has to worry about the capabilities of criminals. We are all in this together.
That has sort of shifted the whole dynamic about how we think about the enabling technologies, networks, and analytics that we have in the classified arena.
And that means using our information technology resources in the most efficient way possible is absolutely necessary.
If you could develop a platform as a service in a secure private cloud environment, that portability then allows you to flex what applications you may put on that platform to meet the specific requirements you have in that mission.
So they're driven to defend, and we all help in playing a part in that. Through the automation that we're doing and the work that we do as an industry and as a community, we're helping make the world a safer place. Thank you for that. Please stand up for me. I want to thank you for making the world a safer place. And I want you to join me in welcoming Carmen Krueger, SVP and General Manager of Cloud Operations from SAP NS2.
Well, hello everyone. Good morning. I'm so pleased to be here, and I want to thank you in advance for the opportunity to share our journey with you. So what we see here up on the screen are Pac-Men. We're going to start this discussion around the beginning of our story, which is kind of typical to the IT industry, where we have a smaller company that's acquired by a medium-sized company that then gets acquired by a large company. This is really not a discussion about M&A. What it is a discussion about is how cloud computing has changed the way in which we as technology companies have to ingest new companies and how we have to deal with industry and compliance through that process. So this story is about a company called Plateau Systems. That was the small company that had a phenomenal market share in the government and regulated industry market space. And they did a great job of delivering to that market unit. Then they got acquired by a company called SuccessFactors. You may have heard of them. They are a SaaS HCM company, very effective in the commercial market, dominant, top right quadrant. And then, shortly thereafter, they get acquired by a company you heard of, a few of you applauded, SAP. Now, you really have now an industry compliant focused company acquired by a very generic commercially focused company, acquired by a company now that's a multinational company, every industry, every language, every country in the world. So when that transpired, we as an organization had to decide, how are we going to deliver this HCM SaaS application? And how are we going to meet the needs of all these different types of customers? So we started with the discussion around, don't worry, industry, don't worry, government. You can just use the commercial version of this. That was a very short conversation, unfortunately. It was an effort in futility. It was rejected. But why? So a lot of you know this already. I'm just going to spend a few minutes because we do want to touch upon the foundations of what is industry, what's compliance, and how does that converge in the cloud. So you see some cogs here, and as you can imagine, for cogs to operate together, they all have to smoothly work. So you first have in an industry-based environment the need for industry capabilities. Let me give you an example of that. If you are a retail company, an industry capability would be your technology's support of point of sale, right? Or if you're a gaming company, more fun, a great example of that would be your ability for your technology to support DLCs, downloadable content. And yes, I have a teenage son, and that's why I know that. The second cog in here is deployment models. So how do you deliver this industry capability, and is it relevant to that industry? Let's use our retail example. As a retailer, you would expect that you'd be able to deliver on a mobile app the ability to buy something, right? Something we're very accustomed to. Well, that's a deployment model, mobility, that you should be able to do on your technology. I'll go back to the gaming industry. A great example of the revolution of the gaming industry was the ability to deliver that gaming platform in the cloud, like Valve. Now the biggest, well, semi-biggest cog in that picture here is compliance. So why is compliance so important? If you cannot consume industry capabilities or deployment models because you don't meet that compliance requirement, then it's moot. All that work you did in developing the best and slickest deployment model or the most effective capability cannot be consumed by that industry because compliance will overrule that. It destroys all the fun. And so just like in the public-private partnership video, we discussed that a bit, critical to this, and I'm foreshadowing a bit, is to deliver this complete set of cogs that work smoothly, you have to have that public-private partnership. All right. So I know many of you were up late last night, because as I was getting coffee this morning, there were people coming in. But, yeah, I saw you. So I think we're going to play a little game. For those of you who are very sleepy, now's the time to take your nap. As I said yesterday in a presentation, compliance induces narcolepsy, so you may go to sleep anyway. But for those of you who want to play, we're going to play a game called Let's Guess the Compliance Regulation. It's going to be a lot of fun. I know, I'm telling you. All right, they didn't give me the, I promise there's something in it for you. Who can guess what this is? Anybody? Okay, I got one right here. What is it? Nice try. One more. ITAR. Attaboy. Okay, so afterwards, come see us. We'll get you something. So let me cue that up so everybody can see what that is. And here we go. Ah, there it is. So what is ITAR? It's really cool. It's called International Traffic in Arms Regulation. Isn't that sexy? So, the ITAR compliance really talks to and enforces this concept of export-controlled information. And what that means is you have a set of data that the government thinks is super special. There's something about it. There's information that they believe is important to national security or for our overall national defense. And so this export-controlled data is governed by this law. It basically tells you how you can exchange data and how you can access data. And it puts, very simplistically, two things around it. One, you gotta be a US person to access it or to exchange it, and you gotta do it on US soil. Seems simple, not really. Let me give you examples of export control data. If you have schematics to a new design weapons system, most probably that's export control data. If you build a part, let's say you have a CAD drawing of a part that's in or part of a military vehicle, that can be export control data. And finally, my very, very favorite, because I'm an old lady, the SR-71 Blackbird, at some point, its bill of materials was actually export control. All right, so this is an example of data-driven types of regulations, data-driven. Who wants to guess this one? And nobody from my team. Who? Very good. Okay, come see us afterwards. FedRAMP. That was actually impressive. All right. So, FedRAMP is a very different type of regulation. It's a standardized set of compliance requirements. And the interesting part about FedRAMP is it is slightly data-driven, meaning the agency has to describe, has somewhat of some discretion in how they describe the data. But then there's a standard set of compliance regulations you have to meet with, and it really manifests itself in this really fun thing called a system security plan. And in that system security plan, you write out every manner in which you're going to comply with these things called control families. And in each control families, there's controls. It sounds very suffocating. I'm really doing that on purpose. It's suffocating. And then within those control families, you have to describe how you're going to do what and how you're going to meet those best practices that have been articulated by the standards body. Okay. Let me give you an example. How many of you have heard of the concept of access controls? Oh God, please raise your hands, people. Oh God, okay. So, access controls are the concept, is the idea of who can access what within your system and having some limitation associated with it. Kind of an important concept. Okay, so within that you have controls that the government has set are best practices in implementing access controls. So you're required then to write up for each one of those controls how you do it, and then this auditor comes in and says, did you really do it the way you said? That's the FedRAMP program. This one deserves the biggest prize of all. Come on, who's going to try? All right, no worries, this is a really odd one. But it's DISA impact levels. So I've given you an example of a data-driven regulation. I've given you an example of a more standards-driven regulation. And now we're back to a data-driven regulation that almost unilaterally forces you into a certain standards regulation. So the Department of Defense has very strictly defined the types of data in levels 2 through 6. Don't ask me why it's 2 through 6, but it is. 2 being publicly available information. You go to usairforce.org or whatever branch of the service it is, and you'll see something, actually probably .mil, but it pull up a web page, and in that web page it's publicly available information. Level 6 is the super secret stuff called classified information. Everything in between is everything in between. Okay. So if you have a specific data type that induces a certain DISA level, it forces you into more and more of those family controls and more rigid controls within those family controls. So I'll give you an example. PII. It's not what you do at the break. PII is, PII is personally identifiable information. If your system contains social security numbers, it contains names, things that can identify you, that is PII. If you've got PII in your system, you've got a DISA level 4 system, which means you are going to comply with a whole lot of stuff. Okay, so now we've finished the game, but it sets up now really our journey, and I appreciate your patience in doing that. This is I'll call it the opportunity statement. So as we received this company, SuccessFactors, we needed to figure out how to deliver this HCM SaaS capability to that range of industry and compliance requirements. And it hits on each one of those compliance examples I gave you. So how do you do that? How do you have a commercial application delivered in a manner that the customers expect without taking all of the fun out of that app? So here's where we begin the lessons learned. And there's a lot of them, so we'll go through some more later on, but let me kind of hit the high points. And this journey is continuing. I hope that we'll have the opportunity to hear from you and your journeys. I think it's super important to share this stuff because we're all learning. We're sort of feeling our way through this whole new compliance, security, agility conversation. So let's start with the first thing, self-actualization. Seems like an odd lesson learned for an IT system. It wasn't the IT system that had to be self-actualized, it was us. And it was a process that really began, I'll tell you in earnest, with our CEO. We really had to force ourselves to understand, what did we have to do? What was our core competency to deliver this to our customers in a manner in which they wanted it, in a manner that was agile? How would we do that? And he really looked at us and said, hey guys, you got to stop obsessing about controlling every dimension of the delivery of the solution. You got to focus on, as Barry said, the outcome. What's the outcome? You want subscription license revenue. You want happy customers, most importantly, which drives that. That's the outcome. And so we made a very critical decision after that talking to. And we determined we would move our traditional delivery model of this SaaS application, which was usually our own bare metal and our own data centers, to Amazon GovCloud. Now, I know that to many of you that seems like a no-brainer. And maybe in retrospect it was. But it was a tough decision for me as a business owner because it had never been done before. It was an unproven platform for this very large, very effective, very well entrenched software as a service application. I had already made an investment in bare metal. So there was some forgiveness I had to ask in making this move, and frankly, a business case that had to be done in order to justify that move. And I was alone. And often when you have to make difficult decisions, you are alone. But what you'll learn, or what I learned, and you'll learn now, was that we really weren't alone. And it's part of the next lesson learned. You know, seeped in the DevOps culture are cross-functional teams. And what we learned we had to do was extend the definition of a cross-functional team to people outside of our organization. It wasn't just about a cross-functional team within SAP NS2. It was about partnering with Amazon to make the shift, partnering with Chef to make this shift. We had third-party experts we had brought in for both security and technology to help us in this re-architecture process. And I'll tell you the most important part of that cross-functional team was our customer base. Why did we need to extend our cross-functional team? First of all, there was no way we could have every piece of expertise we needed resident in our organization. It wasn't happening. We knew we'd have to reach out and ask for help in this replatforming exercise. Second, we needed to ask for special things. Again, I'm foreshadowing. You hear about that. But we knew that not everything we needed to make this happen already existed within each one of our technology partners' portfolio. And then frankly, at the end of the day, in this new world of security and compliance, we really had to make sure with our customer we understood what did they want. There's hundreds and hundreds of pages of guidance on what these security controls mean. But at the end of the day, it's interpreted by each customer differently. So if we ran out, we implemented a control, we thought we did it beautifully, and the customer didn't like it, well, it was a hollow requirement, and it was a hollow delivery. So I'll punctuate this point with a very true story. So this was several months ago. We were we were attending a meeting. It was the final meeting to approve what was called the provisional authority to operate that we needed from the government to move forward with our system. It had been 18 months of hard work to do this and fighting a lot of people along the way, a lot of naysayers, as you know, when you do something transformational. And we were all really nervous. It sort of felt like we were walking into the Colosseum to fight the lions. So we walk in, we're summoned, by the way, we're summoned into the room. There are about 40 or 50 people in there. It's standing room only, it's hot. And we walk in and we're ready to fight. And I realized at that moment, and when you have these kind of experiences, you realize that we weren't alone. In that room, marching down to the presentation, front of the presentation area, was us, which was good. Our third-party experts, right? All these experts we had brought in for security. Our auditor, believe it or not, was with us. Amazon GovCloud was with us, and our customer. So we all marched in together collectively, and we could defend the integrity of our system because we had spent 18 months debating, discussing, designing. And in the absence of realizing that at the end, the process seemed very bureaucratic to me. This was a great example of a cross-functional team coming together in the delivery of something unique and special in that public-private partnership. So let's talk a little bit about, in the video, balancing the benefits of the cloud with agility, speed, and flexibility, and then throwing in security and compliance into the mess, and that's what it looks like. There is a tremendous amount of tension between agility and compliance. And we do, as a community, need to start to mitigate that. There will always be tension, but the question is how hard is that tension pulling? So as we received the gift, now we're back before 18 months. This is before we went to meet with the government agency. We received our package, our Christmas present, which was this HCM SaaS application. And we're pulling the wrapping off of it, and we're getting ready to have some fun. And that's when we realized, oh Lord, that tension is more than we thought it would be. We'd already committed to having DevOps as part of this whole architectural organizational structure. Development and operations were already co-located. And what we did was, the first couple of times, we made a mistake. We delivered something that we thought would be compliant. We went through the process, we dev'd it, we opt it. Sorry, joking. And we ended up at security, and they're like, no, this isn't gonna work. And we did it again. And then I said, we're not doing this anymore. So we really, almost in about a 3-week period, did a quick spin and really made ourselves a DevSecOps environment. We co-located our security people in the NOSC with those other two. We have 90% of our staff physically located all together. And that's how we ran going forward. And it was a huge improvement in our ability to turn, because they were part of the solution up front. And if you don't realize that in some cases, security culture can be one of a Monday night quarterback. It really forced a cultural change across the board. It was not about asking for permission. It wasn't about asking for forgiveness anymore. It was now being a part of a continuum of a solution. Second key step we took was to make sure the automation was at the core of what we did. We weren't just going to do automation as an afterthought. It was embedded in the core of our architecture. So this leads us to Chef. We knew we wanted to use Chef. The gentleman that I'd brought over from the parent company to run DevOps knew that it was that Chef was a good partner for us to deploy this technology. Had worked with it before. So little problem though. One more acronym, I promise. Just maybe one or two more. There was this thing called FIPS 140-2. Anybody heard of that before? Yeah, oh my God, I'm so proud of you guys. That's great. Okay, so for those of you who don't know what it is, it's called Federal, I have to read this because it's so non-intuitive, Federal Information Processing Standard. What it really means is it's a standard used to approve cryptographic modules, okay? We needed Chef to be FIPS 140-2 certified. That was part of what we needed in order to make sure we could bring them into the fold. And so Chirag, who's sitting here in front, and Chris Nimmer, I don't know where Chris is, around here somewhere, they saddled up and they got it done. They worked together to design and implement a capability that would allow us to deploy it in our environment. What does that mean? That's an outcome in and of itself. Why? Because now we, as a private entity, have delivered something to the public federal market that really needs this FIPS 140-2 validated environment or certified environment. So very, very important, very appreciative to Chef for that. So let me kind of touch on how we're using Chef. I'm going to close out here relatively shortly, but just a few areas. So we use it to automate the code pipeline, establish and maintain the baseline, and scale. Pretty generic benefits, it seems like, right? Are those outcomes? So I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about those for a moment. Serendipity is a compliance killer. And in our world, your baseline is sacrosanct. Configuration management, its own control family, by the way, is at the heart and soul of most of your compliance. if you don't get your configuration management right, it blows up your compliance upstream and downstream. It's a real problem. So building in chef automation was critical for us to be able to maintain that baseline and not require a mass of human intervention to do that. Very important for us. And I think it was alluded to earlier by Nathan on the importance of the intersection of what chef is doing today and compliance. Very interesting, the government customers loved it. So when we present to government customers, guys, we rip our architecture apart. We tell them every piece of software we're using and what the function is. They have to know. When we'd step upon chef and we'd say, they're saying, well, what are you using chef for? And then Chirag would explain it, because God forbid I do it. And they loved it. They loved that automation and that redaction of human intervention in that. So another kind of, let me tie this together with cyber, by the way, because you heard a video about cyber. It was a lot about, that topic. And you're probably wondering, how does that tie in? It actually ties in beautifully. First, unauthorized changes are reversed automatically using Chef, right? Well, isn't that a better way to do security? You want to wait for an alert, a muster of an incident response team, or a post-mortem log review that shows you something that shouldn't have happened. This is a great way to address security in a proactive manner. 2, insider threat. Anybody heard of insider threat? You haven't, get a little fluent with it. It really is a very, in fact, it's becoming more and more of an important area around compliance, is addressing the insider threat. Again, a super way to mitigate the insider threat. And I'll even say, I'll call it inadvertent or purposeful human intervention in your system baseline, is to use Chef, to automate it. And the third benefit, third outcome for us was our team spent less time being guardians of the past, maintaining that baseline, and got to spend more time modifying and really visioning for the future of where we needed to take our baseline. And that was also very, very important. So scale, software as a service model. So I keep doing that to you guys, sorry. Software as a service model, it's about volume. It's a volume business, and it's about scale. So we wanted to take advantage of AWS's GovCloud's elasticity, because we had now been freed from the shackles of bare metal, right? And you have to order equipment, install the equipment. We could actually use the elasticity component of it. And so that was a key thing we wanted to do. And second, we wanted to address our system's a very seasonal system. It's a human capital management system, so think about that. Performance reviews, they're done pretty predictably, but often at the same time for most companies or government agencies. Learning has a cycle. If you're going to get your you have to get your certification done by a certain period, or they'll turn off your user access. That generally has a cadence to it. And so we saw a lot of peaks and valleys, and we wanted to be able to address those peaks and valleys. And then on the flip side, we could have a customer that would have a mandatory training they'd have to roll out. Bam. Had to be done in 30 days, so we had to also be able to scale with little notice. And so we used Chef to codify our infrastructure on top of AWS. And in this case, I will say that a business benefit for us was the ability to deploy in hours and not weeks. And why? Because now I could address scale, both predictable and unpredictable scale required to address a volume business. Our goal at the end of the day for the folks out there, and we'll talk some more in a moment, is to fully automate our system. We're really close. We need to take it a little bit further. And of course, to really start to unpack and fully use Inspect. That's also on our roadmap as well, because we do believe that's going to be not only a security posture improvement, which I believe is an outcome in and of itself, compliance, which in our business is an outcome, but also efficiency, and derive a true business benefit from that. So I think Nathan and I will speak some more about this. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate your attentiveness and a topic that often puts everyone to sleep. I really appreciate the opportunity to share our journey, and thank you to the community for your support, and for Chef for your support.
Carmen, Have a seat.
I think I'm on this side, yeah?
What's that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Sit right here. I'll sit over here.
Okay.
How's that? Pretty cool. So one key phrase that you said there, guardians of the past. All too often in technology, we feel like we're that. We're guardians of the past. We have all this tech debt and we have to keep it running.
Right.
That's really interesting. Another thing that you touched on, though, is that you brought together this community of people to help drive forward. And when I think about SAP NS2 and I think about securing and being driven to defend, there is a community of people that I think about. And that is our veterans and those that are in the military service. So are you doing something with them?
Yeah, just central to our DNA and our company is not just to sort of walk the walk, but talk the talk. So our CEO and one of our board members decided to start a 501(c)(3) because what they saw were a lot of veterans.
Wait. 501(c)(3)?
Oh, sorry. It's a non-for-profit.
Thank
it's a
you.
real
Okay.
non-for-profit, not a fake non-for-profit. Let's put it that way. So what they decided to do was to address kind of a seam that existed in the transition for vets from military service to civilian life. Many of our veterans aren't necessarily technology savvy. We call them the ground pounders, right? They're the ones who are really on the ground fighting, but they may not have, yeah, there you go, they may not have had the opportunity to learn technology, and therefore they're often relegated to low-paying jobs. Or they leave service and they can't find a job because their skill set doesn't analogize well to civilian life. So they started with a first class, and they decided they would make them, they call it 3 squares in a cot. They would feed them, house them for the period of the actual training, and have them be certified as SAP consultants coming out of that. And then work diligently. The most important part was to get 100% placement of every class. And that's what they've achieved. And it's a really an extraordinary program. And so our hope now is to extend that into an ecosystem and frankly into a company and a technology that we believe in, which is working with Chef to now train them in Chef. And we're really excited about that opportunity. I think it'll be fun.
That's awesome. That's really great. Carmen, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
It was really wonderful. And thank you for all of the work that you're doing with the
course.
community.
Nice t-shirt, by the
way.
way. Yeah.
Yes.
We trade
what do you think?
t-shirts, yeah? Good?
Yeah, driven to defend. All right, thank you. All right.